hasn't been on here, but if you look off to the right on your screen, you can see comments rolling in by the hundreds and thousands. And that way we can keep track of who's there. And occasionally I'll click a button there and we'll see who's making a comment, show everybody. So, but Cliff is going to be coming on. I found out that I'm old. And,
Not as old as I am.
What tipped you off, Bob?
Actually, it was when I was
Hi, Theo.
I was out jogging up the mountain, and after about my 7th mile, I realized I was starting to sweat, and I said, "Oh my gosh, yes."
Old age is terrible, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the idea of me jogging is ludicrous. My exercise is every day. I take the dogs for about a mile-long walk. Couple depends on where we go. And hey, I see we have Ellen Killian here. Good morning, ma'am. And Cheryl Alexander. She's going to like what we do with sunflowers for the cover of Row.
Okay. And Charles Smarr.
But anyhow.
And Joyce. So, yeah, we got quite a crew here. Yeah.
Oh, we love having them all.
Hi, everyone.
But we know we're going to be ready when Barbara Rowe shows up. That's when we'll know we're actually doing this. But anyway, now that I'm old, it occurs to me that maybe I need a backup, and maybe we need somebody that could start being part of our host for what we're going to call Third Sunday, where on the first Sunday, I usually just show up and rant a little bit with whomever guests I have. Second Sunday, we have Tom Whitmore. You know, everybody knows Tom. Tom's run a couple of 3 or 24 World Cons. And
great bookstore in Berkeley called The Interchange of
Play. And he keeps first printings of this writer. He used to be a big deal. Tolkien. In his basement.
I think I've heard the name. Isn't there a TV show based on his work now?
Something about orcs or the other, but well, Cheryl,
Balrogs or Ballhogs. Anyway.
I have to tell Cheryl that our sunflower is an homage to Kansas, who told the old church ladies to go stuff it by about 60 to 40, and kept abortion rights legal in Kansas. Oh, there's Barb. Okay, we're live. We can start now. But anyway, so that's where you're going to see a lot more Cliff. But this morning, we have the one, the only, I think she's only one. If there's 2 of her, God help the world, is Irene Radford. Now, Irene Radford, PR Frost, CF Bentley.
Julia Verne St. John.
She is about everything. She has written some of the finest high fantasy ever written. She has written urban fantasy that is make you say, "Wow, Patricia Briggs, watch your back. She's coming for you." You know, she has written historical. She's written hard sci-fi. She just has. She's all over the map in terms of what she can do and does do. And probably the most sad thing about Phil is she's not going to be at Oricon this year.
Yes, I am going to be on the virtual con.
You're going to be at the virtual con.
I have 2 panels.
They haven't offered me a panel yet. I got to go find out what's wrong.
Mm.
I'm on the committee, so to speak, I think. But I tell you what, Patty Wells.
Maybe virtually, because I'm in the Bay Area, so that'd be nice. I've never been to an Oricon.
Never been to an Oricon?
Yeah, because I live in the Bay Area in California.
Well, I can.
But if there's a
tell you, the Oricon I consider it my home con. It is from the beginning. Good morning, Andrew. Hey, Andrew, we just bought a story from you. I hope you're happy. Yeah,
Oricon is my home con.
It's great.
I went to my first one in 1994, the week before The Glass Dragon was released. And I had never been to a con before. And my wonderful, wonderful editor at DAW, Sheila Gilbert, FedExed me 3 copies of the book so I could take them to the con. And I'm walked around the house cradling it like a new baby. But anyway, that book is now 27 years old.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I understand if people are willing to pay shipping and handling and a small token, you have 3 of the original 3-book set, literally in plastic bags, from the Dragon Nimbus series, from the Glass Dragon and the 2 sequels of the trilogy.
Yeah, which there are now 13 books in that world. Not all the same timeline, but they're all in the same world, and the dragons are what carries it through. So,
by the state of time, or
pardon?
But what do you mean by not all on the same time?
Well, there's different timelines in the same world. I have the Glass Dragon, and the Perfect Princess, and the Loneliest Magician was my first contract. And then I did the Dragon Nimbus History, which was 3 books, several hundred years before. And then I did the Star Gods trilogy, which was several hundred years before that. And then I did the Children of the Dragon Nimbus, which picks up where the original trilogy kind of left off, with the kids, and the original magicians aging and political situations changing and whatnot. So that all told, there's 13 books in that world. I have an idea for a 14th. I don't know when I'm going to have time to write it.
Zombie dragons?
No, it's a Nimbus of princesses, where Glendon, who's kind of the hero of the Silent Dragon, is now the heir to the throne, and he has to marry. And of course, every political unit in this world suddenly comes up with a daughter that needs to marry the heir to Coronan. But none of the dragons don't like any of them. So anyway, it'll get written, just not as soon as I want it to be.
Now, I understand that, you have been a mainstay at DAW Books.
Mm-hmm.
One of their longest termed writers.
Yeah. Jennifer Roberson has been around longer than I have. Kate Elliott has been around longer than I have. And Kit Carr have been around longer than I have.
Who just recently they released a new Devery book.
Yeah, Devery book. Yeah. They were her mainstay for a long time.
She writes as Catherine Carr, for people who don't know.
So actually, I think Deborah Ross is still doing the occasional book for them too.
The new Darkover book coming out.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
It's the
she's
same.
doing other stuff too, that she's releasing independently.
Yes.
Now, so
absolutely.
how
New
many?
version of Collaborators,
Hmm.
which was a Lambda nominee. Anyway, sorry.
No, go ahead. I mean, I'm just curious, Phil. Now, your name is Irene Radford.
Okay. Yeah, that's my original middle name and birth. Phyllis Irene Radford is my birth name. My husband's last name is Karr. And when I started writing with Daw, there was a Phyllis Ann Carr with the same same spelling of the last name, who had been writing for 20 years or so. She was born to the name. I married it, so she got to keep it. And I had, and at the time when this all started, some of my friends who are romance writers had just been through really serious problems with Harlequin's demand for a pen name. And Harlequin owned the pen name. No one else could write under it, but they couldn't take the name elsewhere without serious legal problems. So I wanted a name that I legally owned. Daw would not put up the same kind of obstacles that Harlequin would, but I wanted the security of a name I owned. So I took the middle name and the maiden name. And then I'm still married to Tim, but I legally dropped his name to get out from under some serious copyright infringement problems with the other Phyllis Carr. So anyway, I'm Phyllis Irene Radford on Facebook. Irene Radford on the website. And now that I've gotten the rights back to a bunch of my books from Daw, they're all going to be written by Irene Radford. Some of them will be written at Irene, Julia Verne St. John, or Irene Radford writing as Julia Verne St. John. I already did that with C.F. Bentley, and enough time has passed that I'm beginning to drop the writing as portion of the pen name. So that's who I am. I am a number of different people at Daw. I'm going to be Irene Radford only at Bookview Cafe, where my books are being released. And speaking
Cool.
of, yeah.
So yeah, talk about how you got involved with how that's been going.
Got involved with Daw. Your sound is cutting out, Cliff.
Okay. Can you talk about how you got involved and how that's going?
How I got started at Daw. Okay. I had an agent at the time. In fact, I just had a birthday card from her yesterday. Anyway, I met the agent through Romance Writers of America. And all of my romance submissions kept coming back. Too much plot, not enough romance. Too many ghosts, not enough romance. Too much of that crazy woo-woo stuff and not enough romance. So Carol McCleary and I decided, well, let's skip or downplay the romance and go with the plot, the ghosts, and the crazy woo-woo stuff. And she submitted it to Daw, where it sat and sat and sat and sat.
I've heard this story before from other people. Yes.
Yeah. Daw's not as bad as Bane. Bane is a bigger black hole. But anyway, being an agent, Carol could multiple submit, which an individual author is not allowed to do for some reason. And she started getting revision requests from other editors, which she informed Daw of and arranged for Sheila to call me and we spent an hour and a half on the phone talking about revisions to my first book, The Glass Dragon, we decided at that point that I would revise the first 3 chapters and submit that to prove that I could do revisions, which is what happens at DOB. That happens with a lot of first-time authors, is they want to know that they can work with the author, and that I would listen to their suggestions. And so I did that and sent them back to Sheila. And while I was waiting for her to get on that again, I revised the whole book based on her suggestions. And when that was done, Carol called her and, quite frankly, said, "We've had another offer." She bought it within 3 days for better than the other offer.
Sure.
So anyway, so in those days, publishers wanted authors that could provide material. And so I got a 3-book contract. Glass Dragon, Perfect Princess, and Loneliest Magician, which by that time, Perfect Princess, I'd written a full draft of Perfect Princess, and I had a pretty solid outline of The Loneliest Magician. So I produced those books, ran them through my critique group, and got them in not only on time, but very often early. So when those contracts were in production, I produced another synopsis and 3 chapters for the next book. Got a 2-book contract out of that. The 3rd one came along a little later. But like I said, at that time, they wanted to build an author's career rather than just publish a book. I was very fortunate in that. And I was very fortunate that I had an editor that I was compatible with on this revision process. And that's important. And I don't know any author that doesn't need an editor. You get so close to the work, you can't see what the difference between what you meant to say and what you said. So anyway, I was with DAW for a long time. My sales were starting to slow down. My production was starting to slow down. And it was 2008, I think. I was on a Yahoo group of female science fiction fantasy writers. And we got into a discussion of how can I improve my web presence, which quit not very long. 18 of us went off into our own separate group, and the Book View Cafe came out of it. And we started listing what we needed to do to improve our web presence. And it all came down to, well, I can do that, but there's no way I can do that. And I can help you do that, but I'll need a lot of help on that. And we started, a cooperative book publisher came out of it. We started with just reprints, short stories coming out on the daily blog. New material on the blog was the biggie. One person putting out new material every day would just seem impossible. There are some authors out there who can do it. But 18 of us could manage it. That's less than 2 a month. Short stories, essays, flash fiction, that kind of thing. And November 2008, we went live. 2009, we opened the bookstore to sell reprints. 2010, we started producing new material in our bookstore, and they're still all done cooperatively. And that's my primary home. I work with Bob a lot on B Cubed. He and I started at B Cubed together, but Bookview Cafe is now my publishing home. And I just, like I said, I just got the rights back to a bunch of books from Daw, and I'm going to be re-editing them, new covers, new back cover copy. And next year, probably April, May, I'm going to start re-releasing those books one a month for 20 months. I'm not going to be helping a lot of other people get started in their writing career for a while.
Sure.
And I also have new books. I have other new books coming out. And I just had to postpone my 50th book because I was going to release at the end of December. But when you've been in this business as long as I have, and you realize that I started it as an adult, that I'm not young anymore. And I got the experience here to prove it. There's a lot of things breaking down that have to be taken care of in the next 3 months. So I don't have time to get Confessions of a Changeling Dancer out by the 27th of December. Although I have commissioned the cover. Maya Bonhoeff's going to do my cover again.
Oh,
she does all my
nice.
covers. Yeah. And so anyway, I wanted to talk about writing.
Fabulous writer in her own right.
Oh yeah, she's a fabulous writer. She does covers for fun, as to relax from the stress of everyday life. She just sent her youngest off to school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Do you remember when she was singing concerts at 9 months pregnant? She films full time. She writes full time. She edits full time. And she had 3 kids. And for a while there, she was also working full time, but that ended. And so, but anyway, she does covers for relaxation, and I sent her the image. She's agreed to do it. So that's taken care of. But it's just getting that final draft rewritten and sent off to a beta reader. That's not going to happen before the end of December. And get it back revised again and then into formatting. So it just doesn't happen overnight. Believe me, it doesn't happen overnight. But I wanted to talk about a series because
yes,
everything published has at least been intended to be a series, even if the second book was not picked up.
So can you talk about that for people who don't writing process, artistic side of it, and the business side of it, and the whole picked up when they're successful, and suddenly they want a series, even if you hadn't intended a series, your first novel and the trilogy, and then kind of explain how it expanded?
Well, the Dragon books just seem to spark with the public. Everybody loves dragons, and they loved my dragons. But that my initial 12 to 14-year-old readers grew up and they wanted more serious fiction. I'm now working on my 3rd generation of dragon lovers. So, anyway.
You don't have to grow loving dragons. I speak.
Yeah. I think when I did the Star Gods trilogy is the one that the 12 to 14-year-old girls could not connect with. I was looking to connect with 12 to 14-year-old boys as well as girls. And the Star Gods, kind of inspired by the Maverick brothers, they're outlaw smugglers who crash land on a planet where dragons are real and magic works. And they cure a plague, and they do some miracles, kind of miraculous kind of things. It's all technology, and they're proclaimed as the Star Gods, and then they have to live up to it. which takes three brothers, 3 books. So anyway, but anyway, the dragon books kind of dwindled, but by that time I'd moved on to urban fantasy with the Tesnonclaire adventures, which ended up as 4 books, 3 books, 4 books. And about the and the Merlin's Descendants books came in there too. Big fat 200,000 word books, where I took interesting and dynamic periods of history and inserted a descendant of Merlin who had to nudge events to make them turn out the way we remember. So I did Merlin and his daughter. I did the Magna Carta. I did 2 Elizabethans, the first Elizabeth, and then I did the American Revolution. And I have to go back and start researching the American Revolution because I've had a request to write. The moment the title is just Virginia Vampires, because it's Virginia 1690, and the Salem witch trials were not an isolated incident. They are the most publicized, but there were witch trials, witch hunts throughout the colonies, well, throughout Europe at that time. So I've got to start researching colonial history again. And I tend to immerse myself when I do a history. I can go on and on and on about the Magna Carta.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's back to something about like series and forces. So say you sell a book, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a trilogy. It's wildly successful, and the publisher's like, give me more, and maybe you hadn't thought of it. But how do you approach that? Right? Like you have a book maybe intended as a standalone.
Yeah. I've had the opposite problem where after the publishing industry got away from the idea of selling a series and giving you 3-book contracts, they went to let's just do 1 book and see how it sells before you do the next. And because of the delay in getting numbers in, it's often 2-3 years before you write the second book, which is kind of what happened to my last books with Daw. Walk the Wild with Me, which is the 10 years leading up to the Magna Carta, from the point of view of an orphan boy who's been raised in a monastery and suddenly gets thrown into the wildwood and meets the original inhabitants of England. And I had written the second book and Daw was sitting on the proposal until they had enough numbers. It was almost 2 years. And so by the time I submitted the book and it went through revision and production, it was almost 3 years between the 2 books, which is too long. Your readership forgets that there's another book coming. And this is one of the reasons I've pulled so many of my books from Daw. But I wrote Frozen in Amber, which is a shape changer, a book, contemporary. I have a Vere Cougar, and she mixes with werewolves, and I think there's a Vere pack rat in there too. I got a good short story out of that one. And it
yes, you did.
Yeah. And it just didn't have the numbers, and it had a satisfactory ending, but not a cliffhanger ending. I knew where I could go with a next book or 6, but Daw decided no, it had not performed as well as they thought, mostly because it had received absolutely no publicity. And the same thing happened with my steampunk novel, The Transference Engine, by Julia Verne St. John. And
great title, author name for
yeah. And then A Spoonful of Magic, which is contemporary Eugene Organ with a kitchen witch.
Very good book.
Yeah. And that's an Irene Radford book. And it sold out. I know it earned out is what it did, but it didn't.
Well, that's a big deal. People who don't know.
Yeah, earning, and my advances are not that great, not that big. But that wasn't enough for the bookkeepers, for the marketing people. So there was no sequel. I know where that one's going. And I may very well write
publishers, I want to say quickly, publishers make money before the author earns out. So the book before you earn out. So if you earn out, it means it was pretty darn profitable.
Right. And so for those of you who are not writers, when you go traditional publishing, they give you an advance. And this is what they think the book will earn. And your percentage, your royalty is a percentage of the cover price, basically. And when the book has earned enough to pay back that advance, that's earning out. And then after that, you start making money. And Spoonful of Magic earned out, but didn't earn enough more to convince the marketing people that it was worth investing in another book. And don't let anybody tell you that marketing doesn't make editorial decisions. They do. They are the final line. This is, if you can't produce a profit statement, forget it.
Damn.
Sure.
Why didn't somebody tell me that before I started my publishing career?
Yeah, but see, that's...
Bob, fortune in publishing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
you start with a large fortune.
Right.
Oh, the large fortune, small fortune?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get to blame Phil.
Oh, yeah, sure. He blames me for everything that goes wrong.
Tell him how we got started, correct, ma'am?
Okay. I get the Trump inauguration. There were things about alternative truths, alternative facts. And Bob calls me up. He's been my best friend for a long time. We do a lot of consulting back and forth on writing and collaborated on a couple projects. Calls me up and he says, I got this idea. I want to publish an anthology called Alternative Truths. I want to show this man up for what he is. This is like the day after the inauguration. And I says, sounds like a good idea. And he tells me, well, I have experience doing anthologies. Will I help him out? On. Starts the full publisher's spiel. And this is a man who could sell used cars to a used car salesman. So, and I kept saying, this is sounding better and better. What's the catch? And I think I asked that for like 3 times before he wound down. And he finally said, well, I want to do it in 100 days. I want this book out by Trump's 100th day in office, which that 100 days tends to be some kind of measure his career based on that first 100 days. And
felt like 100 years, but anyway.
Most of the anthologies I have submitted to or worked with have a 100-day submission period. And I'm going, you want to produce an anthology in 100. Oh, we can do it. We can do it. And you know how to do it. Well, by this time, he'd sold me. And said, okay, I'll do it. And I'm thinking that 100-day landmark is just not going to happen. We got it out. It hit Amazon sales on day 98. And
Perfect.
It hit the bestseller lists.
It hit number 1 for 6 days.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I can remember, okay, we live 200 miles apart. Now we're doing Zoom. We used to use just cell phones. But we met halfway at a McDonald's one day with dueling laptops, I should say. I was still using note cards, 1 note card per story, and put them on a big notebook ring. I can remember throwing Kapla at him as we made the final decision on some of the stories. And we had some fabulous stories. We didn't have, because of I think we had less than a 45-day submission period. So authors just didn't really have time to write, polish, and submit a lot of stories. We got a few reprints, got some poetry, but we had some fabulous stories, and only a few of those. Oh my God, what are you thinking? Those have actually wound down now that we're a name. We've impressed enough people, getting enough good writers, and we've rejected the 12-year-old boy porn stories. And most of them got the "don't let this person near a keyboard ever" kind of a rating.
Hey, but I still get to submit sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, you were never the problem. I'm the one that sticks in my mind because it was so awful was about teenage boys and pigs and what happens when they are not allowed an education.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very much not kosher.
Not kosher. And it was explicit enough that there was no way in God's green earth that I was going to allow that story, that author, ever to appear in a PQ anthology again.
So you can't put lipstick on that pig.
Yeah. And we pretty much have stuck to the standard of no explicit sex, and mentions of sex if it moves the plot forward.
Sure.
And the same with violence, which is pretty standard among anthologies. And as far as I'm concerned, there is a market for explicit sex and violence, but we aren't part of that market.
Yeah, the market's called HBO.
Yeah. There's a market for everything, but but we aren't everybody's market.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, it makes sense if you're, doing anthology, middle school friendly, so it goes in libraries and things. And
right. And Andrew Lucas just came up with a comment that reminds me. I promised my beta readers I would write a sex scene this year. Andrew, run it by me before you give it to anybody else, please. I'm sure you've all seen the memes coming across Facebook about the horrible sex scenes being written by men about women. So I trust you, Andrew, but having grown up as a writer in the romance market, I would like to be able to give you some advice if you need it on how
the
to
Gardner Dozois.
Yeah.
Asimov.
How to portray it is very different from doing it. So,
yeah, like so many things. When Gardner Dozois was editing to collect the worst sex scenes from the slush pile, and then do where he would read choice bits from those scenes, anonymized, guilty.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious.
Yeah. They gain fame just because they're so awful. Whatever. If that's all they're looking for, fine. But anyway,
there
the
are
reason
publishers that specialize.
Yeah.
Not everyone has to.
Yeah.
But back to series.
Yeah.
So
back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there are stories of the outer office of a publishing company would have a dumpster in the lobby, which is where they put all of the unsolicited manuscripts. And once in a while, if a junior editor had 10 minutes to call their own, they'd pull one out, read the first 3 pages. If they wanted to keep reading, then they'd put it on their desk. And maybe twice a year, they'd have an all-night party where the entire editorial staff would try to get through at least the first 3 pages of everything in the dumpster. 99.9% did not survive those first 3 pages, but they found some gems. So that
Sure.
if you wonder what's going on, why your book is at a publisher for 2 to 5 years before you hear back from them, that's why. Now, when I first started, Betsy Walheim's husband was doing the slush reading at Daw, and he had the authority to reject. He did not have the authority to buy. And the first chapter pile went out. The 2 chapters, he thought about for a while before sending it back, rejecting it. Anything that made it past Peter would then go to Sheila or Betsy, the 2 editors who could buy. And that's where the bog down was. Peter was very good at getting back to authors within 90 days if they were going to be rejected. If it went beyond 90 days, you could be pretty sure it was on an editor's desk, and that's where the bog came down. I don't think Peter's working anymore. He's older than I am. And so I don't know how, I go directly to Sheila now. I don't go through the slush pile. So I know where my bog down is. And she's getting better at saying, no. Or I just couldn't sell it to the committee. She's good about letting, fairly quickly, less than a year. That's fairly quickly in the publishing business, which is why B Cubed is so amazing. That we can get an anthology out in 100 days if we have to. Not all of them do.
We're doing it again.
Yeah, the first one and a current one, post-row alternatives, pushing back. So anyway, that's kind of how publishing has changed tremendously since I started. Ebooks were sci-fi fanboy dreams when I started in publishing, and now they're the mainstay. And so, and I had this discussion with Daw not too long ago. Their emphasis, their marketing, their distribution concentrates on print books, and ebooks are just a sideline. And they're not. Ebooks are my mainstay. So,
I think ebooks
latest,
have replaced the mass market paperback in the
pretty much. They have completely the hardcover books are pretty much dead, unless you're Stephen King, or J.R.R. G.R.R. Martin. They're just, nobody's buying them. Wait a year and it'll be in paperback, or it'll be or ebook. And you can kind of tell how old an ebook is by the price of it. When it first comes out with hardcover, your ebook will be $10 to $15. When it hits mass market, it'll be the same price as the mass market paperback. I have found if you price an ebook $1 or $2 under a mass market paperback, it sells.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah, that's and I'm starting to see books where the hardcover, the trade paperback, and the ebook and the audiobook all drop.
Right. Which, the trade paperback is cheaper than a hardcover, but it's still too expensive for all the masses, I would say.
Sure.
Our economy has changed. People making a good living are fewer and fewer. There's too many people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and purchasing a book at a hardcover price is just beyond. I have a number of readers who, are waiting because their sons and daughters have promised to give them the paperback books for Christmas. And like, each child will buy one book in a series and give them all to mom or dad. That's happening much too often. And traditional publishing is having problems. Whereas independent publishers like Bookview Cafe and BQ Press, while not thriving, are at least selling books. And
We're not thriving?
Well, you're thriving because you love the business. You love doing what you're doing. I don't know that you are making any money or much money.
Hey, I love what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole thing. I mean,
yeah.
When else do I get to? I mean, for example, right now, we are doing post-row alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
We are doing Madam President.
Scott's Planet.
We're doing Scott's Planet. Those are 3. Plus, we have a 4-novel quadrilogy on breaking up of America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, where else does a kid who failed English in the 7th grade and spent his whole life writing reports about which direction electrons spin and such, get a chance to work with people like David Gerald, who wrote Hella, like Phyllis Radford, who wrote The Glass Dragon. I just got a submission from Jill Zeller. We published Mike Resnick. We just bought a 10,000 word magical story from Adam Troy Castro. We have people like Jim Wright, who's one of the best up and coming science fiction writers you will ever meet, is showing we're publishing a pamphlet, a voter's pamphlet. Before, I mean, when else will I ever get to do this? I mean,
what a country, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a joy.
And I get to share it. We've got some comments coming in on the mass market stuff. People who prefer paper, they like the feel of the paper, the smell of it. The text, it's as much a textural experience as as an intellectual one. I have to admit, I gave up paper several years ago because I have cataracts. And an ebook or my computer screen even with the Nook app, I can adjust the font to fit my eyes. And I have found that modern paperback, the paper is so thin that the print on the back side of the page bleeds through, which makes the reading experience a chore rather than a joy. So are mass market paperback customers ebook customers, or are they different? I think a lot of ebook readers have aged out of paper, but you also have ebooks on your phone. While you're standing in line at the bank or the gas pump or whatever, you can read a paragraph or 6. So they're different experiences. But I do believe that the ebook is beginning to supplant, or has begun to supplant, mass market paperback. And audiobooks while you're commuting. I know in the Bay Area, people are commuting an hour and a half to 2 hours or more to their jobs into San Francisco. Audiobooks fill that gap. Robin Moore says I can handle ebooks on my desktop, but on my phone or tablet, they wear my eyes out a lot faster than paper. Yeah, I can see that. You're not going to sit in your cozy nook with your blankie and your tea, and your phone to read on. I think a lot of people have that experience, but on your computer or a dedicated reader. Actually, I'm on my 3rd Nook, and I love Nooks. I love working with Barnes and Noble. And Andrew Lucas says he used to work graveyard shifts and audiobooks kept him alive. I can believe that. But then as people age, their hearing decreases. I've worn hearing aids since I was in my early 40s. And boy, has that technology improved. Yeah. Okay, Bob is flashing the camera. The clock. I just wanted to say thank you all for coming in and listening to me rant. I'm promoting a new book that came out last week.
Show us the cover.
I actually don't have a copy of Dandelion Twist. My author copies haven't come in yet, but it's the 3rd book in this series. This is Chicory Up, where pixies live in the park, and the greatest calling of a pixie is to be a friend. They are very much coming of age novels, even though the characters are adults. We started out with Thistledown, and then came Chicory Up. And those were the only books that Daw bought, and then they decided not to buy the 3rd book. The 7 years passed, the books still were not performing well because they weren't being promoted. So I got the rights back. I put them out again, and then I wrote Dandelion Twist, which I'd planned to write all along, but just didn't happen. And I finally got the time and space to write it. And in a way, I'm grateful that it took 10 years from the release of Thistledown to the release of Dandelion Twist, because it's a much more mature book, and I didn't have the experience and insight to write that complicated a character. So anyway, it's out now from Bookview Cafe, both in ebook and trade paperback from Amazon. go to the Book View Cafe. That's all one word, no accent on the cafe. Bookviewcafe.com. And I'm listed as Irene Radford on the authors list. And you can see a whole bunch of my books, including the newest ones.
Well, Phil, thank you for being Phil, because I have to say, without you, there's a lot of things wouldn't have happened. And Phil doesn't know this yet. I think she knows it, but we also should have books 51 and 52 out from Phil, because Phil was a co-author on an incredible masterpiece of literary triumph, The Lost Enforcer.
That's counted in my first 50 books because it was published elsewhere. And I am working on number 50. I have done a first draft and run it through an outside beta reader. I'm now when I'm not working on Bob's anthology and beta reading other people's projects, I'm trying to do the second draft of.
Well, hopefully we will have the second book of the Enforcer trilogy out next year.
Yeah. Well, we got to get the first book taped up and out.
Well, yeah. Well, what we're doing is because we now are the editors, we can do things that we couldn't do before. And so we're updating the first book.
Mm-hmm.
Going to pop it out. But we're going to pop it out when we've got the second book ready to go.
Yeah. So anyway, my 50th book will be Confessions of a Changeling Dancer. And it's the fourth book in the Artistic Demons series. And Confessions of a Ballroom Diva, Piano Demon, and Siren Singer are already out from Bookview Cafe. And I thought I was done with that series, but I'm not. So Changeling Dancer will be out probably early next year. And who knows where I'll go from there. And well, then hopefully somewhere in there, when I'm recovering from hip surgery, I can continue my in-depth research into colonial Virginia, so I can write that story. Vampires and witches and witch hunts. So, okay. Are we done?
I wonder who Libby is and why is she ruining our lives?
Bob, can I do a
trying to end MP3 players? Well, guys, anyway.
Okay, Bob.
The reason it's that time, and I got to remind you, next week is Jim Wright and David Gerald. And
that
Jim Wright and David Gerald
will be epic.
Yeah, getting together. They're called the B Cubed Last Sunday. And every last Sunday of every month, it is those two guys come on. And I will tell you, they are just a hoot to watch. And anybody wanting to get a hint of what B Cube Sunday morning is like when those two talk can go over to our YouTube channel and find them. All of our videos get copied down to our YouTube channel there. And we have fun with them. Like I say, Cliff, we're going to be seeing more of you as we start kicking off our third Sunday, which is going to probably be we're looking at making it a place to have civil discussions on politics.
And
so
thank
we're going to bring on some of those stupid Republican sons of bitches. And we'll try and did I say that with my outside voice? No. But we're going to actually try and find people who can have civil discussions with each other.
We will
Um,
be the only place on the internet doing this, so come here, folks. Bob, before
Yeah, thank
we
you
go,
for being here, Cliff. I enjoyed seeing you again.
It's very, very nice to see you again. Phil, Bob, can I take 20 seconds and like mention? Is
okay,
that cool?
well,
Is that sure.
It's going to be.
Okay. So I've got stories coming out next year.
What do you got coming out next year?
I got a story in this High Noon on Proxima B coming out from Bain, and Cadwell Turnbull's Many Worlds Shared Universe also coming out. So look for those. Yeah, if people want it, like I have a story that was reprinted on Escape Pod, episode 779. Listen to it or read it. Thank you.
Okay, Bob, go get some rest. You've lost your voice, and I know you have publisher meetings later on today.
Oh, she's just making fun of the fact that I picked up COVID at Worldcon. If COVID sucks.
It does. Sadly speak from
Cliff, let's turn this thing off so he can get some sleep.
Get some
Thank
sleep,
you, Phil.
Get off here, I've got to go in and work on the other, and then I got to go do I have three more book meetings today. So Phil, thank you for showing. Cliff, thank you for being here, and all of you, good, and thanks for guys showing up.